President Biden did a sit down with 60 Minutes recently. There were a bunch of headlines that spun out of this interview. Very few of them were helpful.
6 minutes is always a bit
it's
like
tough,
that.
man.
Yeah.
You talk to Scott Pelley or whoever for like 48 hours,
Yeah.
and there's a lot they can choose. But there's stuff about the pandemic, whether he'll run for re-election. But this exchange between Biden and Scott Pelley caught our eye. Here's a clip.
Would U.S. forces defend the island?
Yes, if in fact there was an unprecedented attack.
After our interview, a White House official told us U.S. policy has not changed. Officially, the U.S. will not say whether American forces would defend Taiwan. But the commander-in-chief had a view of his own.
So unlike Ukraine, to be clear, sir, U.S. forces, U.S. men and women, would defend Taiwan in the event of a Chinese invasion.
Yes.
So, Ben, this is, I think, literally the fourth time Biden has leaned way further and said that the United States would go to war directly with China over Taiwan, and then the White House walks it back. What the hell do you think is going on here?
Well, first of all, Scott Pelley has like the best announcer voice.
Yeah.
I just have to say syrupy bass tones. But anyway, on Biden, I've been like deeply immersed in Taiwan, and as I mentioned to you guys, I have a kind of writing project, so I'm gonna share my like views and opinions about where to go a bit. But I will say this about what I think is going on. First of all, why does it matter? Just to again give the background, right? So when the U.S. recognized the People's Republic of China as when we essentially flipped diplomatic recognition from Taiwan, the Republic of China, to the People's Republic of China, we left this ambiguous as to whether or not we would defend Taiwan if China invaded and sought to compel it to join China. And we have the Taiwan Relations Act, which was passed in 1979. Joe Biden voted for it. And what that says is it commits the United States to provide Taiwan with arms sufficient to defend itself. So it's kind of murky. We'll arm them, and we want them to be able to defend themselves, but we don't come out and say that we'll defend them ourselves.
The entirety of the policy is ambiguous.
Yeah,
Strategic ambiguity and what it means, what you need to defend yourself.
So like literally, exactly, the name of the policy is strategic ambiguity because you want China to think we might come to Taiwan's defense, but you don't want to maybe trigger the Chinese to do something because we've made that statement, or you don't want to trigger Taiwan declaring independence. That's the theory behind strategic ambiguity. And what's interesting here, though, is that you have a trend, right? Like you said this 4 times. And so it's not like Biden said this once and they came out and said, no, the policy hasn't changed. This has happened 4 times. So clearly Biden either believes this, and that's certainly his right as president to believe it, or it's kind of like he's at the hawkish end of strategic ambiguity. Like it may be, I'm beginning to think maybe they want, hey,
they're doing this on purpose.
Yeah, nothing's changed, but something has changed. Biden keeps reaffirming this. You know what I'm saying? It's like
it's certainly confusing.
It's certainly well, yeah. I mean, all I can think is they must prepare these.
Yeah,
right? I mean, so
every time.
He must know what he's doing.
You know
at
this
point.
coming up.
If he'd only done this once or twice. So to me, it's turning the dial on this. But I think watch this space. It's one of the reasons why I'm writing about it, because Congress has a bill called the Taiwan Policy Act that aims to significantly ramp up the amount of military assistance we provide to Taiwan, that addresses some of the kind of symbolic issues around Taiwan's status and representation. You have, these comments from Biden getting attention, obviously, and you have the Chinese, particularly in the back end of the Pelosi visit, undertaking all these threats. I mean, Taiwan is going to be a central focus for American foreign policy in the world, really, in the next few years. And I think this question of whether these statements are actually a formal policy change or not, are those questions are going to have to be answered beyond just clarifications from spokespeople after interviews.
Yeah, it's so weird. I mean, imagine the 4th time you called to walk it back.
I mean, he must just not want to. I mean, he must believe it, right?
He's just like, you guys can do what you need to do after this is over. I'm going to say what I'm going to say.
I'm going to say what I think, which is I believe we should defend Taiwan, which is a perfectly legitimate thing. It's just a question of, I do think they'll need to be specific at some point about what is that. Not what does that mean in practice, but like, are they really not changing policy?
Yeah, I wonder what the calls are like from allies in the region,
Japan,
or the
right?
Taiwanese, or
so
whoever.
Japan's a good example because Japan hosts, in Okinawa, a lot of the forces that might be called upon to join a Taiwan contingency. So this is not just a U.S., Taiwan, China issue.
No. And I think Japan's been leaning further into saying they would defend Taiwan in their own sort of strategic policy directives.
In some of their policy directions, but then they get a little, uncomfortable with tensions ratcheting up at times. So there's a lot to be watched here.